Trump has obviously started his second term as president brimming with confidence. As with his first term, though, I think that the noise that's generated by the administration is going to saturate media coverage and obviously create market volatility, but it's not always going to result in policy impact. So I think off the top, it's important to keep making that distinction between Trump's commentary, his ruminations and threats, and then, of course, the policy action that follows or doesn't follow. So far, the executive orders we've seen have focused on inward economic and migration flows, focus on climate as well, energy independence, and then there are elements of that populist sort of culture war factor. Trump's tariff agenda itself, I think, is going to be better understood around April of this year. That's when review into US global trade relationships is going to be due for completion. Now, clearly, we can't finish talking about Trump's policies without referring to some of the tariff threats we've seen over the past few weeks, most notably Colombia in one weekend regarding some of the immigration policies Trump was rolling out, and then followed up, of course, by the really noisy 25% tariff threats against Canada and Mexico and the 10% tariffs against China the following weekend. Now, on those issues, I think we can still safely say that that tariff picture will become a bit clearer after April once that review is conducted. And once, of course, those key positions in the US Trade Representative's office with Jamison Greer and the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick are approved or go through their congressional approval processes. I think that's the point in time where we're going to get a clearer understanding of what it is that is motivating the Trump administration to put tariffs in effect. Those motivations are quite diverse. We're seeing a lot of different motivations. The ones we saw most recently, of course, were directed around border control, around fentanyl control. But we're also probably going to see some motivations behind US attempts to balance that trade deficit with trading partners. This idea of needing to pay to play to get involved in the US market, perhaps using tariffs as that benchmark measure for payment. And then, of course, the leverage that those tariffs can bring the US government when it comes to foreign policy positions, which, of course, we saw with Canada and Mexico. So I think they're the motivations. They'll become clearer post-April. And then, of course, the other thing that will become clear, which I think the markets are very focused on, is what is going to stop Trump from considering rolling out tariffs? Will it be market fluctuations? Will it be alternate trading patterns emerging and so on? And I have a feeling that we're probably going to see Trump rolling out tariffs so that we can see to see how they land and how they impact prior to potential adjustments to those tariffs. I also think with that administration that will be embedded by April, we're probably going to see a more systematic approach to tariff rollouts, more incremental and so on. So significant policy change is afoot. But some of Trump's more extreme impulses are likely to be tempered by the realities of his high office and the stabilizing influence of Congress and the judiciary. And I think those are 2 points that are worth remembering. Structural dynamics in the US-China relationship remain skewed towards escalating competition, but cyclical dynamics are going to be influenced, of course, by how Trump decides to engage Beijing. Beijing would prefer a grand bargain, I think, on economics and security, but this is unlikely this year. More likely are a series of smaller economic agreements, but even those aren't necessarily guaranteed. So Trump will dominate, of course, but it's not all about Trump. This year will be pivotal for the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. Russia's decisions will probably have more impact on the course of the Ukraine conflict than Trump's, and any negotiation process is likely to take several months. So really, a lasting ceasefire is unlikely much before 2026. And before we turn to the Middle East, I think we need to also touch on developments in Europe this year. It's a very big year for the continent, with fractious politics in France and an election in Germany, all the while dealing with the Russia threat, weakening economic fundamentals, and concerns over US policy towards the EU. So on balance, I think Europe's more likely to band together to deal with those threats this year than fracture. And then finally, for the Middle East, of course, it is in a period of deep geopolitical flux and seeking a new settling point. Israel has the initiative and will almost certainly seek to further degrade Iran and its allies, encouraged probably by Trump's maximum pressure campaign against Iran, at least in the first half of this year. But a more open war between Israel and Iran remains unlikely given some of the developments of the last few months. To summarise all of this, it is a very complicated geopolitical picture. It provides a mixed bag of risks and opportunities for the corporate sector that I think, if we take collectively, are difficult to form a coherent picture. So broadly, geopolitics in 2025 is going to be characterised by 5 factors: an increasing cascade of distinct geopolitical issues, more leaderless global order this year, key geopolitical issues enduring beyond 2025, the occasional asymmetric geopolitical shock, think Syria, and then while the enduring resilience of the international system is likely to continue to provide some geopolitical buffers, it's going to be tested by waning commitments to the multilateral institutions that created that resilience in the international system in the first place. So that's 5 issues, clear for short.